The Everything Sequel podcast is brought to you by 2T Fitness and the Vegas Beer Guys.
The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language. 'Cause we learned it from you, Dad. Is Beneath the Planet of the Apes edition. That's the only way I could do it, I guess. All right, my name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, of course, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, the lover of these movies. Hello, Tom.
What the hell would I have to say to a gorilla?
Amazing.
It's an amazing line from Pepsi, Charlton Heston.
Yeah. Oh shit!
When he was
Poor James Franciscus.
When Brent was reunited with Taylor at the end of this movie, I said out loud as I was watching it, "I'm Coke." I'm Pepsi. Coke me Pepsi.
Sit down, Pepsi. I'll take over from here.
It's Pepsi, isn't it? I totally... I don't even remember if it's in the movie, but I totally Mandela affected that he says, "I remember you from the academy."
Yeah.
Does he say that in the movie?
No, I don't know if they...
You have to do a lot of headcanon work in these movies.
Because they recognize each other.
They do, yeah, but I think he just says it's Brent. Well, of course he recognizes he's the same person.
Right, exactly.
Like, who put a mirror in here?
You my lost long twin?
Which
minute, is like another sequel thing they could have done for this movie. It could have been his brother. They could have Curly's Gold this shit. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the 1970 sequel, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, directed by Ted Post. You gotta have some film knowledge to know Ted Post, but if you know Magnum, Force, or Hang 'em High,
yeah.
He directed those, and he did a lot of Gunsmoke and Rawhide episodes as well as Twilight Zone episodes.
Yeah, he described in the Behind the Planet of the Apes as a veteran film and television director.
There you go.
Which, as we know, is a euphemism for not quite as good as we were hoping to get.
Right. But he's been around.
Franklin Schaffner was off doing Patton, so they had no choice.
Yeah, right. Well, this movie had 39% on Rotten Tomatoes, Tom.
Well, say again?
39% on Rotten Tomatoes. And all of these movies, in my mind, except for Escape, are criminally low on the tomato meter. However, the tomato meter thing
really
is kind of subjective.
Me.
Yeah.
That, I'm not even doing this for comic effect. That really upset me. I think we need to. There've been enough of these now. I think we need to sort of cancel the Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, fuck them.
At least on this podcast. So I don't know whose views they are representing.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Well, and also when you go back in time, as far as this movie, 1970, a lot of times you'll just see, Rotten Tomatoes might just have 8 reviews.
Well,
but I also noticed that, I don't know if it was Conquest or Battle, which has a similar rating, 34% or something. But when you look it up on TV, it would say something like 60%.
Okay.
So, but on the official site, this is what they have. So I don't know how to,
Contemporaneously, the critical reaction was mixed and on the lower side of mixed.
Yeah.
So, I guess that's consistent. But what 61% of people are wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
but
that's about the same number of people who tried to vote for Trump. So yeah.
There you go. But to be fair, we both referenced in our ranking episode that the first half of this movie is total retread and a little bit boring.
Yeah.
And if you can't appreciate where it goes in the second half, then you're not going to like this movie.
Yeah.
How you cannot appreciate it is beyond me, but, to each their own.
Well, also, the again we're back in Halloween territory because we have it's coming and much more closely coming after a universally adored movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like even at the time of release.
Right. That's true.
And this is less than 2 years later.
So contending with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, you wouldn't appreciate the fact that part of it's a retread. You also wouldn't appreciate the fact that it's not Planet of the Apes as well. Like, this movie is almost the worst possible kind of paradox.
Yeah.
Because you're going to alienate people who want more Planet of the Apes, and you're going to alienate people who want to do something different from Planet of the Apes, just in different halves of the movie.
That's great.
It's like half the audience is like, I walked out. The other half is, I walked in.
Yeah, exactly.
I walked in about an hour in. It was great.
It was fantastic.
I've never seen. It was like Apocalypse Now.
Well, this movie had a budget of $3 million. In the USA and the world, collected $18.9 million. So, profit.
Runaway. Still riding the wave of box office from the original movie. But
Probably.
Unfortunately, with regards to budget, because in the late 60s there were a series of flops at 20th Century Fox, including Dr. Dolittle and Hello Dolly.
Hello Dolly, I remember reading.
They slashed the budget to half of what the original was.
Yeah.
And there's traces of that. I actually think they do a lot with the money they have.
I think they do too. In all of these movies, they do a lot with the money that they are given.
But you can see
you can
the
nitpick
cracks.
it.
Yeah, you can see that the cracks in the woodwork sometimes.
Absolutely.
But sometimes well, when we get to the second half of the movie, their thrift is something to behold in terms of what they produce.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this movie spent 2 weeks at number one. All of these sequels had at least 1 week at number one.
That's why they kept making them.
Right.
No other reason.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because since doing our ranking and declaring episode, I kept thinking about why it was I never saw these movies.
Access?
And what's that?
Access?
Maybe. I
You're
feel
a little
like
young for them, right? For them in the... I know you like to see movies at the theater.
True.
And you're historically not able to with these.
You're correct. At least not without my bottle. Or in the case of this movie, in the womb. But I guess what I'm curious about is sort of do you have a sense of how these movies are, as sequels, viewed large picture, like culturally?
Yeah.
Because I think I had this idea in my head that they were thought of as dregs.
Yeah. People really don't know what is going on here.
Right.
They've been written off.
Exactly.
To a large extent.
And I think that played into why I never saw them.
Yeah.
And now upon seeing them, I want to build them up. I want people to watch these movies.
Absolutely. A lot of it is to do with access, at least in the modern day.
Right.
In the age of DVD and Blu-ray, they were never cheap to buy. they've only recently been available on streaming platforms, which is
Right.
kind of why we're doing it now. But
Well, the getting's good.
well, the getting's good, and again, it goes back to that. The cult status of the brand all centers around the original movie, and that's the one that is constantly being shown and re-released and re-examined, and the sequels are just not treated at the same level.
Right.
And there's been times in the last couple of decades where you could see one or two of these movies, but never as a series, and that to me is when they become important.
Something else. Yeah, exactly.
Because if you watch them back to back, you realize that all the film series we watch
are connected to these movies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pulling the same tricks that they were doing in the early 70s in this one series.
Right.
And whether knowingly or not, I don't know how much that's the case, but basically there are certain narrative problems faced when you do a continuing film series like this.
Especially when you plan to end it after every single movie you do.
Right. And this movie kind of came up with the answers of how you do that.
Yeah.
And all that we've done in... This is a big statement, but I think it's true. All that we've done in sequel cinema since is to find the same answers.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because they're the right answers, or maybe it's because this has been done and we're imitating that. I don't know.
That's one of the most fascinating things that I find about this series in particular is how connected sequeldom feels to these movies.
Yeah.
Because the tropes, or the inventions rather, that these movies created, we're still using.
Yep.
I mean, that's remarkable, but nobody seems to talk about that specifically,
No.
and nobody talks about these movies almost at all, and especially their place within history of film.
Yeah. It's they say it in Behind the Planet of the Apes documentary, the Statue of Liberty casts a long shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the shadow that these sequels are sitting under,
True.
It's fascinating as well because you think of the Statue of Liberty ending to the Planet of the Apes as one of the biggest swings in cinema. It's a swing that's matched at least 3 other times in the series.
Exactly. I know, it's crazy.
And actually, a bigger swings are made in the series than that. But it's about visibility, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
That image is so ingrained in American culture now that it's such a go-to reference. But blowing the nuclear bomb worshipped as deity, and the Ape Revolution.
Yeah.
Like these things are just as provocative, but they don't have the same iconic status in our culture, so they get overlooked.
Interesting. Well, I mean, starting at the beginning, this movie...
Or the end. Starting at the end of the last movie.
That's what I'm saying. That the beginning of this movie gives us one of our first impasses, ever created, which is, hey, let's watch the last movie. That's where this movie starts.
Let's watch a big chunk of the last movie.
A big chunk.
Yeah, and again...
And then it's like, we see a big chunk, then we're introduced to 2 new astronauts. One dies. And then then just by happenstance, the new astronaut sees Zira.
Yeah.
And then we're back to flashbacks.
Right.
At least of stuff we haven't seen.
You mean Nova?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Yes.
Nova.
No, but she's been instructed to say Zira. So I understand the confusion.
Right.
Yeah, I mean it's again, you've got to give it credit for being one of the first times that this has probably been done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're tired of it because of all the movies we've seen.
Yeah, exactly.
But
it put a smile on my face when I watched it for this movie. I thought, this is amazing.
It is.
Look at this, 1970. Like, this is great.
It's the
Eat your heart out, Superman 2.
And because this is so removed in the past, I think there's like an authentic attempt to make it seem like it's part of one continuous movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's closer to the way people used to watch movies. You didn't used to go to a particular screening. You go to the movie theater, and sometimes you could join a movie halfway through and then, you know, watch the first half on a loop.
Right.
And if you wanted to see a movie again and again, you could just keep going. So we're still in that era. So I understand, like, I think the impulse to do it comes out of that. But yeah, it's a way of easing the audience back in. It's, of course, a way of getting more Charlton Heston in the movie.
Yeah.
Because he's only in a scene of this movie.
Because he's only 12 minutes or something like that.
Spread thinly across the entire movie.
Exactly.
And, you know, it's also an early example of something that, you know, we see all the way through to, like, Back to the Future, where they re-edit the original footage to make it say what you want.
Exactly. Where you want to go for this movie.
And omitting inconvenient plot points. And you'll know because you saw the original. They cut out the part where Zaya says to Cornelius and Zira, "You will be tried for heresy."
Yeah.
Because that hamstrings them for the rest of the movie if they go with that.
Exactly.
And, you know, you can do headcanon work
but
and
it's
say
like,
that once they got back to Ape City, it was like, the guerrillas are starting a war, we don't have time for this heresy shit.
Right, exactly. But it's like...
But they don't say that.
It's like they address it and don't address it all at the same time because they have this council and the guerrillas are like, listen, we need to take charge and we need to do what we need to do. And everybody, please stand and cheer. And then there's been no voice given to this.
Yeah.
But it's like, listen, you two, you're on the short list. So of course you're going to stand up, or then you're going to have your trial. I'm watching you, you know?
No, I mean, there's a headcanon deleted scene of, you know, Zaius and Cornelius and Zira. First of all, they're like, hey, you know that nephew of mine? We lost him on the way. He's gone. Never came back.
Yeah.
And then they get off the horse. They see the guerrillas, like, militarizing. They're like, hey, you know that stuff I said about heresy? Probably put that on the back burner for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But it's really
You're going to be my confidants. Like, I'm gonna tell you that I'm going with them, but to keep an eye on them. Like.
But it's also interesting, like, in that re-edit, what they stress that's different from the ending of the last movie. They make a big thing of Zaya saying, you know, Taylor will find his destiny.
Yeah.
And that makes it look like this is the beginning of the movie. And it is, like, you know, it makes it look like this movie is about, it's Taylor's quest for answers, which is not what I got from the first movie. But if you see this as the beginning of this movie's narrative,
well, I mean, he gets one huge answer at the end of the first movie.
Well, that's an answer about where he is, but this movie makes it look that he's trying to find out, you know, where all the humans at, you know. But this is my first. Okay, I'm going to jump in now with my first.
Me human, you up?
You know what? In this sequel, that would totally work as a variation on Me Tarzan, You Jane.
Yeah.
Me
exactly
human,
right.
you up. This is my first anecdote because I said in the previous episode that I first experienced Planet of the Apes through Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Right.
And I recorded it off television. I was very young. It's one of my first times recording anything off television. It was the middle of the night it was on. And, you know, by the time I'd started the recording or set the recording, we were into that first scene. And I watched the whole thing And in the back of my mind, I'd watch Planet of the Apes.
Wow.
Beneath the Planet of the Apes was my Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
And then as a teenager, I thought Planet of the Apes is on TV. Hey, you know, I haven't seen this in years. I'll put it on. Started watching it. I'm a teenager, you know. I should be connecting dots by now. I'm watching Planet of the Apes. I'm like, you know, it's like an hour and a half in. I'm looking at the TV listings going, it's only half an hour of this to go. How are they going to fit all that stuff underground in? Even up to the point where the movie ended, I thought they were going to go straight through that beach.
Right.
Straight into Brent Crash Landing.
Brent, yeah, exactly.
I just couldn't. And then I was like, oh, I must have seen the sequel.
That's amazing.
And I think it's all because, you know, this movie kind of tricked me with the ending with the last one. You know, I really did see it as one continuous movie by the time I got around to seeing the original. So it's interesting how first you experience these movies dictates how you watch the original.
Good stuff. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing Beneath the Planet of the Apes, the Ted Post film. All right, Tom, can we barely scratched the surface of this movie's narrative.
And the surface of the planet.
Yeah.
We're still above ground.
But I want to talk about maybe a more overarching thing with these sequels in general, because... Now, do I have this right? What year does the original Planet of the Apes take place in? Isn't it 3978?
That sounds right, yeah.
But this movie takes place in 3955.
Again, no one's going back and checking the film.
I'm just curious. This series does this all the time, where they're shooting themselves in the foot. If it's 3955, how would Taylor be there?
Well, because the movie's telling you that's the date. And you have no way of verifying that information until something called VHS is invented.
All right.
Even though you saw the movie 2 years ago, you can be pretty sure that it's, or, if it's you, then 30 years, you'll still remember. But I would
just think, if you're going to make a sequel, maybe you would at least have access to the previous screenplay. Could look that shit up.
Well, you've got a whole reel of that movie in your movie, so... You've got access to a copy of the film.
You could go from there.
Well, they also slip in at they do something which sequels always do, which while we're reenacting the original movie, they slip in some new mythology, which is that they time traveled here.
Yeah,
because in the original movie, there's no sense that it's just relativity.
Yeah,
They're going faster than light, so by the time they get back, this period of time has elapsed. But here, they went on something called a Hassline curve. And that name will become very important later. So essentially, it's not... They didn't wait to introduce time travel into these movies. We got it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
They're time travelers.
'Immediately. 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 'Immedi That's great. Well, and so there's something. I mean, we've talked previously. I said there was a budget of $3 million, and we've kind of discussed the narrative where we get Brent and he sees Nova, and then you get these flashbacks of Taylor and the fire cliffs, which is just kind of deliciously bad to me.
Well, this is really interesting because
in terms of its effects, the actual effects. I mean,
the fire and lightning effects are terrible, but in the context of the fact that they're mirages, they're like they're psychological illusions. That kind of works.
That kind of makes narrative sense.
That makes narrative sense. However, the Earth breaking open looks so good.
Right.
That fucks the fake looking argument.
Yeah.
Because clearly they just worked, one worked and one didn't. And absolutely. It's kind of, it's weird to have Charlton Heston suddenly appear as like a flashback kind of memory. Kind of Nova memory flashback.
No, yeah, it's her memory.
We're spreading Heston,
mostly just off hearing his name, right?
Because I've talked about this on other podcasts. I don't know if I've said this here. Charlton Heston would only agree to be in this movie if he could be in one scene. He accepted a compromise where they would break that one scene up. He says into two scenes. What they've actually done is they've kind of spread him like butter across the movie as
thinly,
very thinly. So there's the end of the last movie that he's in. There's a flashback here. We get an image of him, and then so it's one scene broken up over the entire movie, and that's how it works. But and the other condition was that they killed him at the end. But they went one better than that.
Yeah, I'll say.
They did not stop there, but we'll get there. We'll get there later. I guess now that Brent has been introduced, we need to talk about Brent.
Pepsi Taylor.
Pepsi Charlton Heston, because he's the prototypical surrogate.
Oh my God, yes.
We came up with this term to describe a character in a sequel who plays exactly the same role as a character in the original, but is played by a different actor and is ostensibly a different person.
But what's amazing about this movie is you also have the original actor.
Yeah! Yeah. And so when they finally meet each other and then fight, I don't know how to make sense of that metafilmically. You've got a star and his stand-in fighting each other within the fictional universe of the movie. What do you do with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. But, even in that documentary I'm talking about, they say, I think James Franciscus was cast because he looked like Charlton Heston and he acted like Charlton Heston. But they weren't even... But that's the great thing about that casting is it's totally on the nose. No one is pretending that this guy is anything but a surrogate. A placeholder.
Until we can get to the real Charlton Heston later in the movie.
Well, later in the movie, Zira confuses him for Taylor.
Yeah.
When she first sees him, I mean, I'm sure... I'm sure there's cross-species identification bias going on there.
We all look alike.
Yeah, but, this movie is making no bones about the fact that this is the fill-in. This is the Heston alternate for the parts of the movie that Charlton Heston is not in. And they're not even making bones about the fact that the first half of this movie is a speed through of the original movie, because this is the line when obviously the first thing we see is a crashed spaceship and with one survivor. So that's a complete reset to the beginning of the original. One of the first things that Brent says is, I quote, "We were following Taylor's trajectory, so whatever happened to us must have happened to him."
Right.
The movie is owning what it's about to do.
Absolutely. Well, and then we've already discussed this, but so he sees Nova.
Yeah.
And then he does exactly what Charlton Heston and his partners had to do in the first movie. He goes across a lot of desert.
But faster. A lot.
But yes.
In half the time.
But
exactly
much quicker.
half the time. That's the great...
Exactly.
To the second.
Yeah.
They get through the first half hour of the original movie.
What's
in 15
interesting...
minutes.
Yeah, so they do this quickly, find the ape community.
Yeah.
We get the narrative, what we were talking about, the warring apes, or rather gorillas.
Yeah.
The orangutans and Dr. Zayas don't really trust them, that kind of thing.
But, that's a big shift. That's actually... There's a conceptual, thematic shift here, because the original movie...
Right.
The conflict was religion versus science.
Yes.
Whereas the central conflict in the ape culture this time is military versus science.
Correct.
And that's that's fascinating for a lot of reasons. I think mainly for me because it changes. So the idea of...
Do you think that has to do with being from 68 to 70?
Yes.
And Vietnam?
Yes, I do. I think the idea of Planet of the Apes is it's an open-ended science fiction metaphor that straddles the political spectrum. You can read into the apes as conservative an allegory as you want, or as liberal an allegory you want. And this military rally with the gorillas is a classic example of that.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
If you're on the liberal side of politics, you're
like Zero. You don't want to stand up.
You would read it. You would read it as Vietnam warmongering, basically.
Mm-hmm.
What America's leaders are doing, drumming up an unnecessary war that people are going to die in, and take the country to its ruin. However, I also think you can read this, if you're a terrible conservative person, as fears about the Black Power movement.
Yeah, right.
The way that the gorillas are encoded as the blackest of the black.
Right.
And the idea of them taking
and that's
power.
That's prevalent throughout the series.
Right, but it really coalesces here because General, is it Ursus? Says the gorilla general says, "I do not hate humans simply because their skin is white." You cannot get more on the nose than that.
Can't. Yeah, right. Exactly right.
And many African American activists and comedians, commentators have talked about there is this color grading in the Planet of the Apes.
Right.
That the fairer apes are
always the most intelligent
and rational, and the darker of the apes are the ones who are brutal and militaristic and quote unquote savage. That's all true. There's you can also see it as an incredibly progressive and countercultural image as well. You get both. Literally, you get both.
Yeah,
and that's why this series works so well, because you can read into it what you want, but you can go all the way from left to right and
one
back again.
End of the spectrum to the other.
Yeah. So it's fantastic for that. Well, what's kind of interesting as well is how the way that politics is approached, and I think this is what you were getting at with 68 to 70, has changed. Because,
yeah, exactly right.
If you compare this to the original movie, it had kind of it was both, when they did political allegory, it was both subtle and backward looking. Because we were talking about the blacklist, the Scopes trial, the issues that probably they've shaped the 20th century of American politics, but they're not, we're not talking about right now. This later on we have a peace protest in this movie where Dr. Zayas breaks up because he says we don't want martyrs. Now This movie was released on May 24th, 1970. On May 4th, the Kent State Massacre took place.
Wow.
Where, for those of you who don't know, a student anti-Vietnam protest was broken up by National Guard, and several students were killed by the National Guard at the same time. You cannot get a more direct line to what's going on in your political reality than that. And a lot was made even of the original, that it was released a day after... No, sorry, it was released and then a day after Martin Luther King was assassinated. And people read thematic parallels into that. There's a Mad Men episode that covers both events in the same episode. But that's nothing compared to this.
Mm-hmm.
That is like... that is hitting the nail on the head. And I think often the fact that this movie is more direct and on the nose when it comes to its political meanings is seen as a flaw. That it doesn't have that nuance that the original has.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's definitely more on the nose. But
yeah.
It's no less powerful, especially...
But I was just going to say, it's not any less effective.
You think that someone is going into that movie theater who might have been in the Kent State Massacre, or just lived through it, or just seen it on TV. They're bound to connect the dots in a way that makes Planet of the Apes almost look quaint, because it's about scopes, it's about the late 1940s and the Red Scare.
McCarthyism,
it's crazy. So props to the movie.
Props, right?
Yeah, and I mean, their ability it's about their ability to take what is in the air politically and find a way to express it.
But I find it so fascinating that, like, how this movie toggles between those big ideas, but also, like, narratively matched with, well, he gets caught, and then he escapes, and then he gets caught again, and we're just trying to fill some time.
Oh my God, it's just... like... It's so efficient, and yet so routine.
Yeah.
It's literally going through the motions of a story.
Exactly.
And everything is like a pale version of the original. I love that, like, the first chase through the forest, such diminishing returns. One ape...
Right.
One flesh wound, a few trees. They're not even on horses.
No.
It's just
And can somebody explain to me, in this universe, especially in these first two movies, like the original and this movie, man, people heal fast.
Yeah.
He gets shot in the neck, and the next thing you know, he's got a scar that seems to show that it's been healed for a year. And same with his bullet wound on his arm.
Yeah.
In this movie. Cracks me up.
Speaking of, can you explain to me how one of the holdovers from human culture is a steam room? I mean,
I cannot.
These are creatures with fur.
Yeah, it's like...
Why would they sit in a steam room?
Why would they want...
I mean, it's a nice image, Dr. Zaius and Ursus with...
I think it was literally just an opportunity for more prosthetic makeup.
But, were they actually trying to torture these actors? Like,
I don't know.
Literally torture them? Not only are they in a full-body ape suit, they have to sit in steam? Did they not go through enough having to wear prosthetics? I mean... I guess this is the point we reintroduce... Oh, well, we got to talk about this. The surrogate discussion has not ended.
No.
Do I need to tell you that? Is it going to blow your mind that Cornelius is not Cornelius?
Oh, I know.
You know. Okay, good.
Yeah,
you do your research. I thought you'd know.
Yeah.
But for those of you listening and who
but for a movie series
movie,
that hires the same actor to play even different characters,
yes.
like this is almost nothing.
I guess
he just wasn't available.
So this is not Roddy McDowall as Cornelius. He was directing a movie in England and was unavailable.
Right.
And the actor's name is it's so generic. I keep forgetting it. I've looked it up about 5 times David Watson. God, it's even more generic than I thought.
Wow.
But and you know the entire as with Brent, the entire purpose of this recasting is that you would not notice it was not Roddy McDowall.
Yeah.
And they just tried to get slip by, and it works magnificently well. It's hard to tell that's not Roddy McDowall inside.
Yeah, right. And it's kind of a credit to the makeup of these movies.
And the actor, you know, that's a thankless job. And we've seen it before with
that's like whoever played Crispin Glover.
Crispin Glover, yeah. But
Back to the Future too.
This is even more seamless. And you know, I think the first few times I saw this movie, I assumed it was Roddy McDowall, but you know, he had a cold or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so well done, David Watson.
But it's also interesting how much they're not a part of the narrative. Like they're there for a small chunk, and then they're gone.
Except there are actually, if you break this movie down, there are only 2 heroic agencies in the movie, and one of them is Zira, and both of them are women, which I find fascinating. I think that's another 1968 to 70 shift. Beginnings of feminism, the women's movement, because Zira's the one who unlocks the cage on the carriage that allows Brent to escape, and and Nova is the one who saves Brent and Taylor from killing each other.
Yeah.
So
more by accident, by just showing up, but
yeah, but so I mean, yeah, they don't have much to do, but I think Zira, at least narratively, has a very decisive, has a turn. You know, she's responsible for a turning point.
But I always thought it was kind of interesting that we never even see if there's a consequence to that action.
Yeah, it's just again, it's It's an inconvenient storyline, so they got rid of it. They got you know, and but interestingly, Zaius is still kind of looks pissed with them.
Mm-hmm.
But they never mention the reason why they're still pissed. And now he's pissed because Zira is, you know, trying to stand up against...
so, yeah, it's like he's pissed about that, but he's also confiding in them that I'm going to go with these warring guerrillas because I don't quite trust them. So...
Yeah. But there's a lot of, you know, fudging here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always struck by Cornelius saying, "We loved Taylor." Watch back Planet of the Apes. You specifically, Cornelius, did not love Taylor.
Right.
Zira might be able to get away with saying that. You cannot say that. And also, and I think this may in the end turn out to be deliberate. There's no mention of the fact that Dr. Zaius is a theocrat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he rules a society based on religion.
Yeah, exactly.
And you wouldn't know that from just this movie.
From watching this movie, right.
It's like halfway through the movie before anyone mentions that it's a holy war. It's never depicted as that. I think in the end they're sort of playing that side of ape society down because of what happens beneath the Planet of the Apes. It's so religious satire based.
Well, and it's because Ursus is what he's talking about is the Forbidden Zone.
Yeah, right.
But it's more like abstract. He doesn't even know what's there.
It's Vietnam.
And they find the cave by accident. Like, yeah, wasn't that where they went? Or right about here is where we lost them? Or they must have gone in that hole in the rock, you know?
That's where,
they don't even know
where you lose.
Who's down there?
That's how you're able to do a whole movie in half the time by taking these kind of shortcuts.
Right. Exactly.
Because in the original movie, there's a giant fact-finding mission with cartography and archaeology, and here they just wander into the right cave accidentally.
Yeah, exactly.
But
what a cave! I mean, that's the carnival cave of New York past.
But the Forbidden Zone is very much Vietnam. I mean, even the tactics of the underground people are like that of the Viet Cong. It's guerrilla tactics.
Mm-hmm.
It cannot be an accident.
Right, exactly.
That this is exactly the sort of the way that these warring societies are represented.
Well, I'll tell you what. We're about to get into some interesting shit because now we got to find the people beneath the planet of the apes. So why don't we take another break?
We're nearly at the end of, the speed through.
Of the speed through of the first movie.
When Brent has to find out that this is Earth.
Right.
All over again.
Wait, what? What's going on here?
Yeah.
New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah, and I just as a before we go to break, just as a sort of I don't want the last word on Brent to be that he is just a placeholder. He is. Everyone's fine with that, but James Franciscus as an actor puts his back into this performance.
He does, yeah.
He takes it very seriously. In fact, even Linda Harrison, who played Nova, in an interview has said he took it really seriously.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
Like, he was...
Like, almost too seriously.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, and if Charlton Heston is taking it less seriously than you must be one serious actor. Right? And I think he does great work. Like, he's
good in the movie.
He goes through all the same emotions that Charlton Heston does in the last movie.
That we've already seen once, yeah.
But it's authentic, he's not as cynical as the movie is with casting him.
Yeah.
Like to me he breaks through that.
I agree. Yeah, I think he does too. All right. We're going to take a break, everyone, and we'll be back right after what I'm sure will be a quality commercial. Right after this.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we are back yet again, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing the 1970 sequel, Beneath the Planet of the Apes. It's time to go to 11, Tom. Here are my two notes in succession. I have one note that says, this movie feels repetitive to the first movie and itself.
Yes.
Followed by, about an hour in, this movie just dropped acid.
Yeah. Well,
I am on the trip.
Boy, am I too. Well, as soon as Brent goes underground, sees the Queensboro Plaza subway station, he says, "This used to be my home." Great. The recap has officially ended.
It's done.
The first hour is a recap
montage. Is they insist on showing it like 4 or 5 times. We have to see, I forget what it is, what street we're on. But then we see the New York Stock Exchange and we see, what do we see? The train station?
The library, New York.
The library,
Public
yeah.
Library, yeah. Do you know the story? Do you know how they? First of all, like, you know, I think that set production design is beautiful.
Yeah.
I think those images are beautiful. I'm kind of disappointed to find out how they were made.
Really?
Because it is so simple, you will not believe it.
All right.
This is what they did. They got a photo book of New York. They cut out the buildings, adjusted the photographs so they were an angle that looked like forced perspective,
Uh-huh.
and gave it to the artist, and he drew it. That's it.
Wow.
It's just a painting of slightly altered photographs from a book.
With rocks.
Yeah. I just could not believe it. And that's how they do all that underground, which just looks so epic.
Yeah.
But it's just paper.
It's not even sort of those Star Wars where they used to paint it on the glass.
I think it's a matte painting based on that, but there's no original art there. They've just taken photos of the buildings themselves and you know, just altered the angles of it. And so, you know, as the production designer said, we did it for free. And, you know, they had half a budget to go with, so incredible. It looks so
good.
And I think what really strikes me is that the style of the movie just turns on a dime.
Turns on its head, yeah.
Like, it's like we go from, we went rapidly through the
entire first movie.
The entire first movie in half the time, and suddenly we slow down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's silent as well. There's no music.
Yeah.
It's silent, it's slow, we're underground, it's urban. Like, content, style, everything
changes.
Is reversed. And you literally don't know what is going to happen next. Or where we even are.
Oh, and you're never going to guess.
And you would not guess? No! In a million years you would not think that it turns out the way it does. But everything has changed in seconds.
Because at some point, people are going to start taking off their own faces.
Yeah, and also suddenly we start getting these intense zooms and jump cuts.
I was going to say, zooms, jump cuts, there's, it's
a totally different visual language down under the Planet of the Apes, beneath the Planet of the Apes.
And what's funny is that, as represented by Dr. Zaius, you always sort of have that aspect of the religiosity, but it's sort of muted with him.
In this movie, it's non-existent.
Right. And then it, like, all of a sudden, like, religion is back in focus.
You can't get more heavy-handed religious satire than worshipping a nuclear bomb.
The divine bomb.
Yeah, it brings religion back into focus, and it's silly and it's on the nose, but I think it works extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just. I mean, even before we get to that, we have a lot of mind control murder.
Yeah.
Happening.
Or at least mind control attempted murder.
Attempted murder, instead of, we have telepathic forms of communication replacing dialogue.
Yeah, exactly. We go Twilight Wolves on all of a sudden.
which would be like, I mean, it would be even more experimental if they sort of followed through on the idea of telepathy. Unfortunately, Brent, and, shout out to Indiana Jones Minute, he's a real Johnny says what he sees. Right? He's telling you everything that they're saying. Right? He's saying it in his answer.
Yeah.
He's like the one-sided phone call of this movie. The police? No, you're the police. And that's him. And, it's a movie from 1970. It was never...
says what he...
Isn't it great?
That's amazing.
The great Jerry Porter there. And, the genre of the movie totally changes.
Mm-hmm.
We went from fantasy adventure to hard science fiction. Again.
Hard.
Like hard science fiction with, as you have noted, a psychedelic twist.
Yes. Bloop, bloop.
And it's so unrushed. I mean, it's like, it's really taking its time now.
Yeah.
Oh.
Because we see Dr. Zaius come up with Ursus, and they're going to get the fake fire, and they're going to get the Christ-like... Is it supposed to be Caesar?
Well, it's the lawgiver who I think
Right.
is reimagined as Caesar in battle.
Okay.
Well, that's a different time. It's a different timeline, but
You're right.
yeah. So the lawgiver becomes Caesar, but at this point, it's not Caesar.
Right, because I mean, well.
And if you think I'm being vague, that's not
that's
on me.
not me. That's the movie. But
yeah, and that's speaking of it's kind of in the 1970s.
You got Passion of the Christ imagery going on.
Sci-fi and horror would start to kind of mingle more in the 70s, and this is a clear indication of that because it's suddenly so violent and gory. This is a G-rated movie.
Exactly, right.
With a crucifixion
and that was always one of the huge concerns for these movies of, like, how can we keep it G?
Well, don't have crucified apes on fire and a bleeding statue. Right? I mean... And that's, it's like a classic, but again here, formative sequel move is like you up the... I mean, they were ahead of the game here. You up the ante on violence and gore as a way of maintaining people's interest in the movie. But it's also a pattern within this series of elevating the amount of violence, only then to spend the next movie kind of undoing that and taking it back down again and then repeating the pattern. It's fascinating.
It's amazing.
It's just like, wow.
So narratively, I mean, for those that haven't seen this movie, what are you listening to us for? Watch it first and then come back. But narratively, the people beneath the planet of the apes know that they cannot match them. All they have is the telepathy.
Yeah.
That's all they've got. And so they're coming up with these telepathic traps to try and keep people at bay.
Traumatic hypnosis.
Yeah.
Deterrent-based violence. Yeah. Again, the Viet Cong.
Right.
Or like in a more allegorical sense, it's a satire of the idea of a nuclear deterrent.
You're right.
Because
and it's that that's kind of interesting that we're
fascinating.
Just after this, we're going to get into the Cold War.
Yeah.
Fuck, this movie's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of gets quite silly when you have church organ hymns altered to incorporate the word bomb.
Right.
But it lands very well. Like it's sort of, there's something about them going through with that, like, silly idea and taking it to its extreme where you've got a choir singing, you're sort of like hail to the bomb, all creatures great and bomb or whatever it is.
bomb.
And James Franciscus is in the middle of it, dressed as a choir boy going, what the fuck is going on? The look on, and this is what I mean about him sort of carrying whatever's put on his shoulders. He's looking around going, does anyone else know how crazy this is?
And then they just start taking off their fucking faces, and he's like, whoa, 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 whoa.
I mean, this is the real showstopper. This is arguably the part of the movie where they match. Because, for those of you who don't know, the original Planet of the Apes movie transformed movie prosthetics.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time Planet of the Apes had done, everything in that field of design had changed because of this one movie. So much so that makeup artist John Kruber, prosthetics artist John Kruber, they had to invent an Oscar just to give him something. They just said, "Here's an Oscar. What's it for?" All of this, we don't have a category for it. You changed everything.
Yeah.
And he did this too, and in its own way, I think it's just as incredible.
It's just as good.
The detail of those of the inside of their heads.
Yeah.
And Ted Post deserves some credit as well, because he really pushed for it being as anatomically correct as you could make it. Because originally they were revisioning mutation as, a different number of eyes and limbs and stuff like that, but he sort of said no. He said go to the medical journals, and John Kruber was previously a war medic and designed prosthetics for veterans.
Oh wow.
So that was right up his alley. And that's how they got to that look. And it's such a showstopper moment.
Yeah.
In this movie when it's like, oh, they're all wearing skin masks.
Skin masks.
That's what they really look like. And it's just as top of the line as the ape masks. Which is good, because some of the ape masks are looking a little
in order to save money,
in the crowd scenes.
Yeah, it's like they went down to the store from Halloween 4 and just grabbed whatever monkey masks they could find.
But only in the background. In the foreground, it's all good.
It's all good stuff.
It withstands a good steam.
Yeah.
It must be good if it's withstanding that amount of steam.
Oh my gosh.
And then Coke meets Pepsi.
Right. I was just going to say.
The star and his stand-in meet within the fictional universe of the movie.
And everybody's minds
everyone's head explodes, Scanner style. I love the fact that, this is the rest of Charlton Heston's scene that he
contractually said, I'll do.
And I love how, again, the pace changes. We get to them fighting very quickly. As if...
Right.
I'm saying as if, probably it's true, as if Charlton Heston has somewhere else to be.
Because he probably did.
It's already half a scene, and it feels like it moves too fast.
He was buying a new gun that day.
It's also a stark reminder that per Star Trek and the original Planet of the Apes, that late 60s, early 1970s sci-fi just eventually will descend to pugilism.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it will just end up being two guys fighting.
Right.
I think Alex Robinson from Star Wars Minute made that comment about, why he prefers Star Wars to Star Trek. It's like, at the end of every Star Trek, it's just going to come down to two guys fighting.
Well, and in this one, for those that don't know, the two astronauts see each other, recognize each other, are happy to see each other, but then are forced to fight through the telepathic powers of one of the beneaths.
Yeah, and they would have both... I say they would have both been killed. They would have both been given a brief clemency.
Right. He keeps turning around.
If it weren't for the intervention of Nova... again, the only other person in the movie who does anything proactive that helps anyone, and
what do you make of Linda Harrison taking on this role where she never speaks a line for 2 movies?
She's
pretty incredible.
Oh yeah, I think she's fantastic in this and the original movie. I think. What I like about this movie, you mentioned, getting the band back together and the ability to sort of bounce off the original cast.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked about, Dr. Morris Evans as Dr. Zaius is as good in this movie as he is in the original movie.
Yeah.
And he is damn good in that movie. He's asked to do something, interestingly, probably the only person who's asked to do something totally different this time.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's in a totally different role. He's trying to mediate between the chimps and the gorillas, war versus science, and he's supposed to be the and you really get that sense of a guy who's caught between these two poles of thinking.
Yeah,
just through his acting. Because he's grumbly all the time. He's like, I suppose we'll go and invade them, but let's think about it first. And, he's it's a real
you have a bit of a carryover
of that character.
Don't you think you have a bit of a carryover from the first movie? This idea of he's got to go find his destiny, and you always have that sense that Dr. Zaius knows about the Forbidden Zone and the dangers of it, and that's why he just wants people to stay away. He doesn't want people to know about how the apes evolved and any of that, and like
I think a lot of that is headcanon. Because I think it's made very clear in the original movie that there's no life in the Forbidden Zone. I think that's a bit of a retcon, and I think they've just adjusted. They put Zaius back in that. But there's no sense that there's anyone down there in the original movie. And that's fine, I don't...
I guess you're right about that. Like, the original movie has more to do with his fear of finding out how the apes evolved.
Yeah.
That humans used to be in control of them.
Right. But it's just great performance, and and something, I guess, something that I think you should look out for in later sequels is how they choose to put African Americans in the most oppressive roles in this movie.
Yeah.
Because, I didn't notice the race of the guard who's watching, who's making them kill each other.
Right.
Never occurred to me before, but when you match it with the rest of the movies, they always like to make a point of it's the black guy who's in the position of brutalizing underlings.
Underlings, right?
Which I sort of find again, going back to that, is this just really racist, or is this progressive? And you could play it both ways.
That's the thing. Well, and it's funny you say that, because I kept going back and forth of where I would say. Throughout the series, they seem to be trying to comment on race, but this seems really racist.
Yeah, they're doing it in the most racist way possible.
Yeah,
and then we get told that the bomb is the Omega, the Omega edition of an atom bomb. And that, along with the skinless zombies, I mean, it's a foreshadow of what the 1970s has in store for Charlton Heston as an actor. Right? It's not just science fiction in the 70s, it's also Charlton Heston's film career.
Right.
Was dictated by this movie. And I mean, I mentioned that, I thought this was a really ambitious... that this part of the movie was so ambitious, and one of the things that gets me is we have no point of sympathy here.
No.
The apes are fighting the underground nuclear people with humans in the middle. It's one kind of evil versus another. And also our point of identification is split between two people who are essentially the same person.
Right.
And who, in the last part of this movie, go around as if they are two thought processes in the same brain.
And it's like, I was really struck by, Brent getting shot.
Oh my God, it's horrific.
It's
like, well, first of all, what's even worse about it? So, we've been talking about these two characters as the same person. There are some minor differences that actually do end up mattering. One is that Brent is lower in rank, which is symbolic of how he's the sequel version of Charlton Heston.
He's the Pepsi.
But also he is represented throughout as being generally more pleasant and humane than Taylor ever was.
A better person.
He's such a better... compare the way he consoles his dying astronauts superior to the way that Charlton Heston spends the first hour of Planet of the Apes talking shit about the apocalypse
Right.
To his colleagues. It's chalk and cheese. And so Brent is the one who's rousing Taylor, who's like completely world weary at this point. He's like, come on, let's go and get,
Come on,
let's
we gotta
go
do it, we gotta do it, yeah.
Turns out Taylor's more right than he is, that there is no hope.
None.
In any
so
of this.
bleak at the end of this movie. He gets shot, and Charlton Heston gets shot as well, but can manage to put his hand literally on the button.
Literally on the button, and again, this was his idea, apparently, to blow up the world.
And that's the thing, was that this movie wants to end the series.
Yeah, and Charlton Heston specifically didn't want to be asked to do it again.
Ever again, yeah.
So he said, why don't I blow the world up? And they took him at his word. And before that, you actually get a really powerful character moment, which is the reunion of Taylor and Dr. Zaius. Like in the middle of this madness. This is where I really admire the script. Because, it's... Like, I guess you could get away with them not meeting again. But they have a moment that, it's a tiny little moment, but it speaks to their entire relationship throughout this.
Right.
Because it starts with this is my favorite part of it, is it starts with Zane's going, I knew you'd be involved in this somehow.
Exactly.
And it's perfect.
Delicious.
It's like, part of it is like, yeah, he's the only one of two talking humans on the planet, and the only one you know of, for a start.
Right.
But second of all, it's just like, it just speaks to the way that their relationship is teased out. I love that they're able to have that moment in the middle of all this. And then everyone dies and the world ends.
Yep.
Which, I'm going to say this, and feel free to contradict me, both
Go ahead.
Mike and anyone listening. I think this is the bleakest ending of any film in the history of Hollywood cinema.
Oh, wow.
I cannot think of in a major motion picture produced by a major studio, I cannot think of a bleaker ending than everyone dies and the world ends.
However, well, I know that that's the intent, but I also have to wonder, that nuclear bomb's underground.
Yeah, I mean...
So it doesn't matter, because they decide in the next sequel that is what happened, and that's what pushes the narrative for that story to go forward.
Right.
But in reality, I don't think that planet's going to... I don't think the planet's going to implode because one nuclear bomb is set off. Everybody underground, dead.
But it's the Omega edition.
Right.
Specifically designed for that purpose. We're told that.
I know.
And we also...
I'm just saying, my working knowledge of how bombs work.
But that's the thing. If you are in any doubt that they can walk this back, they give you a voiceover that tells you in no uncertain terms the Earth blows up. And that's what I mean. It's like, we're leaving no ambiguity on the table here. Yeah, well, a lot of things about that bomb don't add up as well. The fact that you came up with a nuclear bomb that could destroy the world by 1972.
Right.
And that it seems to be, that between 1970 and 1972, we started to only use crystals to operate things, like we're in the Fortress of Solitude. Right?
Yes. Feels very Land of the Lost.
Unless, the underground people made those additions, I don't know. But they don't seem to know what they're doing with the bomb. Which is ironic, since it is their deity.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say. It is their god.
But yeah, I mean, this is where I think, the bleakness and nihilism of 70s science fiction is paved ahead for us in this moment.
It's so delicious, Tom.
I
mean, we've talked about big swings before.
I even resent that. I know they were trying to clear up any ambiguity in a way that's actually quite powerful, but I don't like that voiceover.
No?
It's stupid. It's pathetic, badly written, underwhelming. It kind of undoes the insanity a little bit.
Yeah, right.
And it's like too much like a Rod Serling Twilight Zone outro.
It does feel very Sterling. That's my note, actually.
And he's also the whoever's doing it is trying to be Orson Welles and how he
and they're
says
not.
It. And it comes in too soon, doesn't last long enough, then cuts out.
End of rant.
But I do like the silent credits that follow.
Yeah.
Because there is nothing musical that can follow this.
Nope.
It's just
like
every
literally
time I see
it's the end.
Every time I see it, I'm surprised they go as far as they do. Every single time. I keep looking for something that suggests you know that it's not what it is, which is complete and total annihilation. It's not even it's worse than even just blowing up the world and seeing everyone irradiate. Because you actually have to witness the your lead's deaths before it happens. Like any point of identification in the movie is
but that's what I was going to say,
because
like as you brought up earlier, it's like by the end of the movie, who are we following?
And Brent is shot in the head in an extremely graphic way.
In the head, in the chest. I mean, he's shot all over.
I mean, this was our guy.
Yeah.
For the movie. It's I mean,
it's so much. It's so remarkable. I was gonna say fun, but that's not the right word.
It is. No, but there's something I don't know. There's something about that insanity and chaos at the end, which is really entertaining.
Yes.
When it's all going down, it's oddly entertaining.
It's like if you went to the circus and all the animals got out.
Well, that's dangerously close to what it is.
Yeah.
And that the chaos of the gorillas, taking down the busts in the subway. And it's for all the budget cuts, that shot of the army assembling at the Fox Ranch. I mean, it's like an epic Hollywood Western.
Yeah.
Like there's in later movies which also had budget problems, you see that B-moviness creeping in. But apart from there's odd moments where I see it here, but I don't get much of that. I feel like they pulled off a lot with the budget.
That's one last thing that always makes me laugh about these movies too, is we're always talking about New York when everything appears looks like it was shot on next to the set of MASH.
Well, it's the Fox. Yeah, well, it is. It's the Fox Ranch.
Yeah.
It's famously, just incredible.
So good. All right. Anything left for you? Credit check or?
No, that was my credit check.
There's not a lot of credits in these movies.
Well, it's like back in 1970 when like 4 people were thanked for the entire movie. It's like what is the sort of now average of 5 to 10 minutes for credits, and this is less than a minute.
2.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you have something to add to the discussion for Beneath the Planet of the Apes, we want to know. We love this movie.
Actually, I just want to add something. I've just seen it. The 4 most asked questions about Beneath Planet of the Apes on Google.
Mm-hmm.
How did Planet of the Apes end? What happens after Beneath the Planet of the Apes? Why was Charlton Heston not in Beneath the Planet of the Apes? Was Nova pregnant in Planet of the Apes?
Wow.
She was supposed to be pregnant, that is true.
Well, there you go.
But her baby would have got blown up anyway.
Doesn't matter. All right,
Nothing
everyone.
matters. It's the 70s and science fiction.
Yeah.
Nothing matters.
The world ends. Thank you. Goodbye. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Coming up next, of course, is Escape from the Planet of the Apes, our favorite movie in this series. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, I am Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Say goodbye, Tom.
In one of the countless billions of galaxies in the universe lies a medium-sized star, and one of its satellites, a green and insignificant planet, is now dead.
That's what you went with?
What better ending could there be?
You're right.
Otherwise, I'm going to be going, peace and freedom, freedom and peace, peace and freedom. Someone should have given those actors something else to say. Peace and freedom,
Just
freedom
one,
and peace.
That could have done one rewrite for them.
Yeah. Can we have another protest word, please?
There you go. All right, everyone. Stay tuned. Coming up, Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Coming to your ear holes soon. Thank you for listening. Until next time.